Hello, Rena.
Hello, Dr. Bach.
Welcome back to a free association conversation. Welcome to everyone to a free association conversation between Rena Bauman and myself, Dr. Bach Ho. We're both organic intelligence coaches. We help people reduce suffering and increase capacity to handle more in life with ease using the protocols of organic intelligence. In these free association conversations, we try to aim both at people who are completely new to organic intelligence and people who already know its basics. We try to aim at the balance. And today, our starting sentence to free associate around is, but if I take it easy, I won't get anything done. Yes, I'm aware of a lot of mainstream advice: get enough sleep, try to calm down, try to relax, don't be so hard on yourself. I get this advice. I hear it a lot. And at the same time, I have a hat on of someone else on. It's not my view. And at the same time, I'm very suspicious of this advice. If I were to take things easy, I just wouldn't get things done. I wouldn't clean my room, my house. I would let my children starve to death. I would let my partner starve to death. I wouldn't go to work. The world would fall apart. So this idea, this idea of take it easy is not plausible. Is not plausible to me, Rena.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
have to work hard, and so I like the Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk work 100 hours a week. All these athletes saying you got to work hard. Navy SEALs, just the idea of taking it easy is just not. There's a partial truth. Okay, you need sleep, you need to take breaks, but overall, we got to get going here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I see that idea all the time because one of the things that I spend a lot of time encouraging is of the bipolar elements of either activation or deactivation, either rising in intensity or coming down in intensity. Of those two, the hardest people have is the coming down part, the coming into rest, integration, deactivation, and allowing that to happen. And not only to allow it to happen to begin, but to really deeply allow that to happen. So, just on a basic level, yes, we need rest, but I don't know that people really understand just how much learning, growth, healing actually happens in rest time,
Oh, okay.
right? Because so if I'm trying to learn a new piece of music and I'm trying to memorize that new piece of music, the I can keep working and working and working and working and working at it. But at some point, if I don't go to sleep or take a day off, even better, there's no time for the biology to organize everything that's taken in and lay down the scaffolding or the framework in the system. And so we know through learning theory, if you really want to learn something, do it study just before you go to bed, because then the integration can happen. And so there's a lot of ways we can talk about how important rest really is for our ability to then have the energy it needs to activate and do something, whatever the something is that we feel like we need to do.
As you were talking, an anecdote from someone came to mind. She told me this a year ago, and it haunts me. She's a pianist, a very strong pianist, and a piano teacher. She told me that when she started piano very young, but had a lot of tension in her playing and couldn't get rid of it. And at 19 years old, she just stopped playing because of the tension. She couldn't relax. She stopped playing and she went through a period of trying different careers, accounting, other careers, trying to find her way. Didn't play any piano, didn't touch a piano for 10 years. At 29 years old, I don't know the context, but somehow just came back to piano and started playing, and all the tension was gone. And she became superb, in high demand, and became a professor of piano. And I mean, just and runs a music house. So, and she told me this lesson that she took 10 years off of playing piano. I could not believe it. Um, and that's how she became so good, by taking 10 years off. And it haunts me because I will never do that. I can't. The wider context was she's Asian. Most, if not all of her, most of her students are Asian, and with traditional Asian parents who think work all the time, never rest, and she has to fight hard to convince the parents to let their kids take one day off, otherwise the brain won't integrate. And in that context, she told me she took 10 years off. And that's how she became so good and released all her tension. And because I have tension in my playing and we're trying to work on it and it's getting there, but it haunted me because it was too extreme and stark an example of how doing nothing and taking it easy was the way to progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What that anecdote makes me think of, and the correlate with that in terms of our lives. So she developed habits over the course of her development as a pianist. And those habits early on became kind of almost in a sense concretized. They just became so that they're like concrete and almost literally for her in terms of the level of tension. But it was just habits that were conditioned into the system because there wasn't this normal oscillation of up and down that was being put into her early on. And so much of what we struggle with as adults is a result of all of this conditioning that's developed habits in us. And some of those habits are to keep going, to push through stress, to fight more, to do even if we don't feel okay, to keep going. And that's too just a conditioning. But not only is it a conditioning, because in her case, it went on for so long, that conditioning, that yes, it took a long time to take a break.
Mm.
If she had all along been saying, people were saying, take a day off once a week, every quarter, take a week off, every year, take a month off. It doesn't have to be that. But if that was scheduled into her, then she wouldn't have needed a 10-year break. But many of us as adults are coming into life where our biology has so much old processing and old conditioning to get through. So Steve, the founder of Organic Intelligence, will often talk about the backlog of processing. All that hasn't been able to be worked through. So it's like our biology is still in past time, even though we're trying to live in present time. And it can make it difficult to get things done because all the body wants to do is sometimes just let go, collapse. So the body's going, I can't do anymore. I'm done. And the mind is going, but if I let my body do what it wants to do, which is collapse, then nothing will happen. I'll never get done. I'll be stuck here forever.
You had mentioned earlier a major part of organic intelligence is that our biologies optimally need to go through cycles of action and rest, or work and rest, excitation and relaxation. So organic intelligence is not saying the overall mission is to calm down, relax, take it easy. It's saying that the oscillation between action and rest need to be optimal. And for many people, they're way over stressed with action. And there's a backlog of intensity that needs to be processed in order to restore optimal oscillation. So there may need to be a screaming of take it easy, take it easy, take it easy as important remedial protocols to begin to restore oscillation, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
There may need to be a 10-year break in some
Wow.
way, whether that means, just laying in bed for that. I'm not suggesting that, although
Yeah.
sometimes illness forces that. So there are all kinds of illnesses that will come in to the biology when that work rest activation deactivation cycle is not in sync and has somehow gotten disrupted long enough. Well, then the biology will show up in such a way that I just can't do anything. Like people have no choice but to rest. We don't want to get there. We like part of what we're trying to encourage is how do we support resting, yielding, letting go? How do we support that in the biology so that the action that comes out of that is a more organized action?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So rather than a frenetic trying to make things happen, that there will be a sense of, oh, in the rest, there will be the impulse that arises for the next best right action.
I think, okay, so organic intelligence would say you want to get things done as efficiently as possible, not with a frenetic level of stress and activation that you're coming at life with, because that's uncomfortable, draining, could lead to illness, and probably will agitate other people around you. It's not very efficient. So that's one thing we're saying, that organic intelligence is saying, right? You want to get, it's for getting things done and efficiently. And the way to do it efficiently is to have proper rest cycles. Yeah.
Right. And that can be hard
Yeah.
for multiple reasons. Like one, um, life demands things of us as adults to get things done. Like that is a truism that, we don't have, hopefully the situation is you don't have people taking care of you because that's not ideal. There's a way in which we do have to take care of ourselves and take care of our lives. And so, yeah, there are things to get done. And I think oftentimes a confusion comes in. So I notice with clients that they're like, okay, I've been listening to you tell me that I need to rest, I need to follow an impulse for action, and so I've got all these things that are stacking up that aren't getting done. I'm not doing any of them, and in that there's a little bit of confusion because I'm not saying don't do things. What I'm saying is we have to support the biology doing a proper rest so that we can establish the conditions that will allow action to come out of a more
Yeah.
organized state. But in the meantime, there may be action that has to be done out of a more disorganized state. Right. So there may be times where we do have to push through getting certain things done. And I know this happens often with my clients who have chronic illnesses, that they at some point they have to do certain things and they have to push themselves to do it. But we are continuing to do the kind of work of noticing work, rest, activation, deactivation, setting those conditions of what feels better, setting the conditions of orientation. Like we're doing all of that work so that someday the action can come out of a more organized state, and then it will be more effective, more efficient.
You're raising situations in which a client may need to push themselves because they do have to get things done in life. They can't just take it easy. And then you're going to work, and then long term, you'll work with them on how to relax to the extent possible, even while they have to push. And then with the overall goal of optimizing the cycles of excitation, relaxation. I'm now curious about the opposite client, someone who says, Rena, I can't relax. I don't want to relax. I don't even know what that means. Don't tell me. I will go crazy. And in fact, I didn't even want to go to an organic. I don't know why I'm at an organic intelligence session. Because I much prefer these other therapies that tell me do your cognitive work, do this behavior change, do the Wim Hof breathing, do the 5 things on my worksheet, and then this is sophisticated effort in getting you to be able to do more. So I like these other therapists and coaches because they're not telling me to relax. They're giving me things to do, and I like that. But for some reason, I'm at an organic intelligence session with you, and I know that a big part of the OI program is you have to find a way to relax, but that's not, I can't do it. I think I'll die if I try to relax.
So, one, I would say that they are correct in that they can't do it. We want to support the biology doing it itself. And at a certain level, I don't care how strong that person is, if they keep going without adequate rest for what their output is in relation to their biology, if there is
Yeah.
not some kind of oscillatory balance there, their biology is going to win. It'll win out, and they will either get injured, get sick, get taken out some other way. Like the biology doesn't do that. It can't keep doing activation, activation, activation. You can't keep inhaling, 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 inhaling. If you keep doing that, at some point, the biology will force the exhale. The
Yeah.
difference is, are you going to join with it, or are you going to resist it and therefore miss out on the benefits of it? In other
Yeah.
words, they don't have a choice, right? They're either going to join with it and see how that oscillatory process, they can join with it, or it's going to do it to them, and that's usually not very pretty.
Yes. So with you're saying, I think you're saying one thing you're saying is with a very action oriented person who says they can't relax, you're saying you're right. I believe you, and you're saying what's true. You can't relax. You're addicted to this action orientation. It will lead to bad consequences, and so you're recommending the focus on ease. There's no other way. And I want to build on that and say in if such a person, the super action oriented person who can't relax, comes to or does organic intelligence work, why should they why should they do organic intelligence work? Because I, the coach, would not be giving them homework to relax. The reason is they can't do it, and it would just further frustrate my client. So I'm not going to tell you to try to relax because you won't do it. And if you tried, it probably would backfire and you get more frustrated. So keep doing your action, 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 and risk of burnout and illness and crash. What's going to happen in organic intelligence sessions in the 50 minutes we have together is I'll join you in talking about whatever you want to talk about. I'll join you in states of high activation, high energy. And when I see signs of your biology relaxing, which will happen even in the most action oriented individuals, I will do things subtly to reinforce those. So if for 1 second you look out the window at a bird, if for one, I'm tracking every inhale and exhale you do, if one exhale seems a little bit longer and more spontaneous, if one shoulder drops by a millimeter, if your face looks a little more relaxed for 2 seconds, these are just some examples. If I see signs of deactivation, I will do things to reinforce them. It could just be nodding, could be saying, mm-hmm, could be saying, oh, that's a bird out there. And by that method, I'm reinforcing states of relaxation in your biology without asking you to do anything, without trying to get you to relax, without assigning homework to relax. I'm not going to ask you to do deep breathing. I'm not going to ask you to drink tea. I'm not going to ask you to meditate. I'm not going to ask you to take bubble baths. I'm not going to ask you to sit in a bench by the park. I'm just going to be having conversations, and you can be type A and action oriented and hyper excited, and I'll join you exactly at your intensity level. And when your biology produces moments of relaxation, I'll reinforce them. And over time, you will just automatically be able more and more to relax without trying to. Does that?
Yeah, what I love that is really beautiful about that is the idea that implicit, I'm gonna make explicit, is that, and we've said it before, the biology is always oscillating. We can't get away from that. So there's always going to be some kind of deactivation that will follow some activation. Now, whether that deactivation can be ridden, all the way down the mountain to be seen yet. But what you're suggesting is even something as small as the breath being the exhale being a smidge longer is what's being reinforced. So the oscillation that is fundamental to our very existence, our breath, breathing in, breathing out, just that can be supported without a person having to do anything. It's the most simple, basic way of letting the biology know, yes, that little bit longer exhale, that was in your favor. More of that. And just by mirroring that or reflecting that, and it can be explicit, like saying something, but more often it'll be implicit, like you suggested, just the nod or the right? There's just a noting of it, because the biology will pick that up. And slowly what will happen in those situations is those little exhales will be a little bit longer, or there might be a little bit more pause from one sentence to the next sentence. Or there may be a closing of the eyes for a moment. Like we'll start to see more and more signs of the letting go happening, and then we're just encouraging what the biology already wants to do. It's just it's so kind. It's so kind to the biology.
Yeah. One point you made, I want to repeat it for reinforcement, is that your biology is trying to relax and will continue to try to relax. It's just that the signs of its doing so may not be strong enough right now for you to detect, because in general you're focused on intensity and action, and the coach can spot these subtle signs of relaxation and reinforce them, such as a slightly longer exhale. And I worked with you, Rena. You were my organic intelligence coach I think you still are on an ad hoc for like 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. I don't know exactly. And in the beginning of our work, for most of our work, I talked a lot, trying to process life and so forth. And towards the end of our regular weekly or every 2 weeks, toward the end of our work, our regular work, we're still working together, but I became quieter. And I remember there were sessions where there was almost no talking. This was in person. I would sit down, you would sit down, and I would look out the window, or I would look at you, or I would look at objects in your office. And it was like, finally, orientation is so stable. But orientation is, in organic intelligence, refers to connection to your environment through your five senses, in general, primarily visual, and then secondarily auditory. And it indicates that the intensity level in your biology is not too high. The biology naturally wants to connect to the environment through the senses, and it will do so unless intensity inside is too high. If intensity is too high inside, it hijacks the attention. So your attention goes to your thoughts, all the talking you do, all the feeling you do, as opposed to, there's my window, there's the sky. And if your intensity is very high, orientation will seem very boring and unproductive. Yet it's the sign of the most productive thing, because it indicates that intensity is settling and your biology is starting to organize. So towards the end of our work, our regular work, orientation was becoming so stable that we were having like the very rare organic intelligence sessions where I go in, we're co-orienting, Everyone else will say, what the hell's happening? It's a waste of time. You're doing nothing. Exactly. Because we finally got to the point where my biology had so much capacity to process whatever it was processing in the background that I could orient automatically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you do organic intelligence work and you're a very intense person and very ambitious and very action oriented, that's perfectly glorious because you can go to an organic intelligence coach. And if they're a good coach and attuned, they'll join you in high intensity. And that can be enjoyable and actually supporting you in the pleasure of your high intensity can is first of all enjoyable, which is good, and will help the deactivation because pleasure tends to be less intense than pain. So if we can enjoy and praise what's good about your action orientation that is enjoyable and leads naturally to more signs of relaxation, which are also reinforced by the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Mm.
What's coming to mind now is and this is now I'm gonna go back to the opposite side
Okay.
where a participant was noting how Steve Hoskinson does a lot of work and does a lot of things and is very active. And the person was commenting about like, how do you get so much done? I'm kind of here hanging out in all this. I just don't have energy. I'm kind of lethargic. I feel kind of freezy. Like how is it that you get all that done and it's actually like not too much? Like it's actually possible to be very active, very productive. And I want people to be active and productive in life. And their biology may not be ready for that. So I'm going back to this idea of the backlog of processing. If there's a lot of lethargy, depression, collapse, freeziness, these are all experiences of the body trying to conserve energy because too much energy has gone out and the load, the battery of the body is just too low. It needs to be built up. And so sometimes there can be a lot of shame because you see people successfully navigating high states of activity. And you know, like it's like, all right, I'm unable to do that. I don't have what it takes to do that. And so there can be some shame that comes around that. And so part of what we've also been encouraging is not that we don't want high activity or high productivity. It's that it has to be within a biology that can support that. And an example, what that would mean is, as you've talked about before, that I'm able to do activity and still be oriented at the same time. I'm able to be brought out into the external environment even while I'm doing all this activity. And that is also a sign of, well, my activity is not too much. Go ahead, I'll let you jump in
Okay.
there.
You're saying taking, I think you're saying, or what in my mind, taking it easy does not mean you're not getting anything done. It means whatever you're doing is easeful.
Right.
And you may be lifting weights, doing complex math, being the project manager for a very large project, managing thousands of employees. If it's within the range of ease, that is taking it easy. So you could be there are questions we could explore about maybe in the future about what does it mean to do nothing because that could have a magnifying glass. I almost titled this session, but if I do nothing, nothing will happen. And then what does it mean to do nothing? The point is, taking it easy does not mean you're doing nothing. It means that whatever you're doing, which could be extremely complex, extremely productive, extremely focused, is within the range of ease. And on time, well, piano teacher pushes students to play fast, pushed me to play fast. And she said, one reason for this is because that's how you'll relax, because the only way to play fast is to relax. If you only play slow, you may be using a lot of effort. So that was an insight to me. And if, especially if, because I have goals in relation to Rachmaninoff, who's impossible to play for mere mortals. But So to play fast, I have to be at ease. There's no other way. So that's a nice example of ease could mean 10 years off of playing the piano, which sounds horrific. I never want to talk about that again. Or ease could mean play super fast, because the only way to play super fast is to be at ease.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you were gonna, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about two different possibilities of people who are able to do activation, but they struggle to find the deactivation and support the deactivation. And then there's other people who have no choice but to be in the deactivated state
Yeah.
and have trouble finding the activation. And we might talk about that a little bit more maybe next time or another time,
Agreed.
like about that those transitions from activation to deactivation or from deactivation back up to activation, and so how do we support those state transitions so that they become increasingly easeful.
And since we're on our time, I want to offer one, aiming at a practical takeaway for viewers. So if take the phrase, if I take it easy, I'll never get anything done. I get that idea. I get where it's coming from. One thing organic intelligence would say in response is, we want to focus on what is comfortable and enjoyable. And that really is the pathway to ease. So if getting more done is more pleasant or less unpleasant than what you regard as relaxation, then do the getting more done because it's more pleasant or less unpleasant. And that's the way to access ease. We're not saying you access ease by being uncomfortable, because that's the opposite of ease. Okay. So the focus should be on what is pleasurable or less unpleasant. Focus on that as opposed to but if I take it easy, nothing will get done. Yeah, that would be my.
Yeah, I love to put it in the language of less unpleasant. And that's
Yep.
probably when people are finding they have to do things in a state that they don't have the energy to do them in. The goal is, how can we do that in a way that's less unpleasant than the way you would normally typically do that? And we will often support that in people. So I love that you put it that way.
Thank you. And by the way, just this last week, I started getting interested in slow Rachmaninoff pieces, and I was never interested in those before. I was always obsessed with the fast pieces, and the less fast pieces suddenly became more interesting to me. And it requires a whole different skill set to play slowly. Let's focus on the practical takeaway of do what's less unpleasant or more pleasant. That was just my parting. I had to make a piano comment.
Yep, and I love hearing about it, and I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear more Rachmaninoff, whether it's slow or fast.
Yeah. Thank you. And I will see you next week for more free association on organic intelligence. If you're interested in learning more about Rena or myself and our coaching practices, there will be links in the description. So see you all next week.